Good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar on internal audit in pharmaceutical industry, organized by Internal Audit Standard Board of ICAI. I am CA Nandakumar Kadam, and it's my distinct pleasure to serve as your moderator for this evening. Before we begin, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to the Institute of Chartered Accountant of India, the Internal Audit Standard Board, and specifically CA Chandrasekhar Chitre sir, Central Council member and Chairman, Internal Audit Standard Board, for conceptualizing and bringing this important webinar to the fruition. It is my privilege to welcome Chairman of the Board, CA Chandrasekhar Chitre sir, a visionary leader whose strategic insight have always guided the Institute through evolving governance landscapes in internal audit. Sir, we are truly honored by your presence today, and I request you to sir, your opening remark.
Well, thank you, C. Kumar Kadam. It's indeed a pleasure to welcome you all for this very important webinar on internal audit of pharmaceutical industry. We are also fortunate to have amongst us CA Mohit Dan, who is having on-job experience of this particular internal audit of various industries, but particularly specializing in pharmaceutical industry. Friends, as you are aware, the Internal Audit Standards Board is guiding the function of internal audit, prescribing standards, prescribing procedures, and also organizing various seminars in a physical mode, webinars, and meetings. The purpose is to enhance the value of the internal audit function. We have also coordinated with various internal auditors from industry, from practice. Now, in this series, we are having webinar on various topics which are related to internal audit. Like audit, for internal audit also, across the industry, the same principles follow, that you have to bring about any limitations, maybe in following systems, regulatory. Now, new dimensions have been added, that is relating to environment, social good, etc. And maybe from industry to industry, they vary. Therefore, although the principles are same across the board, for certain industries, you have to focus certain principles or certain areas the most. Like in case of maybe electronic industry, the environment pollution may not be that relevant, or because considering the nature of activity, there is no damage or maybe limited damage. But in case of pharmaceutical industry, it is possible that you have to have a deep dive in this particular aspect. So at the board, we decided that maybe besides having webinars on generic topics like the standards in internal audit, the deliverance, the drafting of reports, etc., maybe industry specific also, let us have some deliberations. And considering the expertise of Mohit in this internal audit of pharma industry, we sought his views, and he said that yes, he will be able to engage the lecture and enlighten the attendance about this particular segment of industry and what are the various nuances while conducting internal audit. He will be delivering the address. However, maybe the participants, if they feel that some aspect needs to be elucidated, something which has not been covered and they are having quest of knowledge, understanding about it, you may please post it on chat box, and the MOC for this particular webinar, Nanda Kumar, will address those questions at the end, so that no stone will remain unturned. Of course, after the seminar also, when you reach home and something strikes to you, please do write to the Internal Audit Standards Board, and we will escalate to the faculties, and we will try to get the views on the issues which are in your mind. So the quest should not remain unresolved. Certainly, we'll try to address those points. So thank you, Nanda Kumar, for agreeing to coordinate this particular event. And thank you, Mohit Dan, for being available and agreeing to deliver, and in fact remaining present and going to deliver the lecture. Our secretary from the office uh, is also present, so she will also be coordinating. Since I'll be leaving for Delhi, so maybe after some time I will have to leave. But the session will go on, so maybe Arti Bansal, who is secretary, who is also a chartered accountant, and we have Arun Agarwal, who is also in internal audit team. So they also are available throughout the presentation. So thank you, and over to you, Nanda Kumar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your valuable words. Thank you very much. I am also thankful to our Vice Chairman of the Board, CA Ravi Kumar Patwa, sir, in absentia, whose guidance and expertise have been instrumental in driving innovation in governance and assurance functions. As we move forward, let me briefly outline the focus on today's webinar: internal audit in pharmaceutical industry. Internal audit in pharmaceutical industry is a crucial function indispensable for ensuring the quality, safety, and efficacy of pharmaceutical product. Given the high stake involved in the public health, the pharmaceutical industry stand as one of the most heavily regulated sectors globally. Ultimately, internal audit here is a vital mechanism for ensuring that pharmaceutical companies operate with the highest standard of quality, integrity, and regulatory compliance. To guide us on this topic, we have an exceptional speaker for today's webinar, CA Mohit Thand. CA Mohit is a seasoned chartered accountant and entrepreneur having over a decade of leadership experience in assurance, consulting, and fintech. A fellow member of the ICAI, he brings a strategic blend of profound financial acumen, expert risk advisory, and innovation in smart finance. He is the visionary founder of Agrawal, Dhand and Motwani and Company, a reputed CA firm based right here in Pune, where for over 10 years he has led extensive internal audit, risk management, and advisory mandates. Expanding his professional vision, he established Thinkative Global Consulting, a niche consulting firm dedicated to outsourcing, value-added services, and cross-border business support services. Furthermore, he is the founder of CashTech, a pioneer platform focused on supply chain financing for MSMEs. His professional contributions are equally impressive. He is he is a respected member of the Internal Audit Standard Board of ICAI for current term. Notably, he is the co-author of the technical guide on internal audit of the pharmaceutical industry published by ICAI in 2023. He has been a significant contributor to the internal audit checklist, ICAI Internal Audit Board, and the Office Management Manual for Members in Practice, ICAI CMP. He also serves as a faculty for a certificate course on internal audit under the Board of Internal Audit and Management Accounting at ICAI. And he is a speaker at National and Regional Forum for ICAI on subjects such as internal audit, risk, and assurance. We are truly privileged to have a CA Mohit to share his profound expertise with us today. Over to you, Mohit. Thank you.
Thank you, Nand Kumar ji. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, our chairman, visionary chairman of internal audit. We have seen how the board is working towards, empowering the chartered accountants in the field of internal audit, and really I appreciate and thank Shekhar Saab. Thanks to the team, Aarti ma'am, Arun ji, for having me here. Before starting, I would like to discuss about pharmaceutical industry. We all know that pharmaceutical industry is, we are the pharmacy of the world, right? So we are the major exporter of generic drugs. We are the one of the largest manufacturer in India. We have the largest FDI approved plants in India. How pharmaceutical is different from other sector. As we all are aware, it's a deeply regulated market, right? It's a deeply regulated ecosystem where each and every product, each and every document is registered, approved by some or the other regulator. Let it be its supply chain, or it is their manufacturing, or it is even its sales, right? You need different, there are different kind of licenses, there are different kind of ways how the supply chain should happen. There are temperature controls and etc. There is speed to market, there is risk of spurious drugs, so we are going to talk about. So as the core remains same for, as Chitle Saab rightly mentioned, the core of procurement, manufacturing, administration, finance would remain same. But the peculiarities of any industry would change. And pharmaceutical is one industry which is definitely different from others. So today what we are going to discuss about is what all constitute a part of pharmaceutical industry, what are the core processes, non-core processes in the industry, and how one should look at. Definitely, as we all are aware that each client would have a different intensity of that audit with respect to the process. But in general, we are going to discuss what all needs to be covered in any pharmaceutical industry audit that we, as an internal auditor, we audit. I'll just share my screen. Aarti ma'am, if you can please confirm that my screen is visible.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So, as discussed that we are, global leader in the generic market, and it's one of the, one of the growing industry, healthcare. We all know about the lifestyle, the way diabetes capital was US, now India is also becoming. So we are not only fulfilling the demand in India, but also fulfilling the demand of the world. We are ranked third globally in pharmaceutical production by volume and 14th by value. By value, while at a later stage 14th, because we have that efficiency, we have that benefit of low cost and better efficiency, automation, and that's why value 14, but third rank by way of production, right? And it's one of the very good recognition as a country to serve the medicines to all across the globe. We are in, if we talk about AIDS, we are supplying almost 80% of the global anti-retroviral drugs, which is used in AIDS. We are pharmacy of the world. 60% of the global vaccine is produced to us. So produced by us in India. And we are also a preferred location for clinical trial because of our population, because of different kind of geography, nature of people, and availability of people. Government is also pushing very hard in terms of, you would have seen PLI, production linked incentive schemes to promote production of pharmaceuticals, to promote production of APIs on intermediaries, which are raw material for pharmaceuticals. There's also Ayushman Bharat scheme, which has come in as, as a citizen of India. If you are certain below the threshold, you will have those benefits by the government for your healthcare. So if you talk about it, if you see these numbers, and the objective of putting these slides together is to discuss and understand the importance of pharmaceutical industry in India, right? So as a chartered accountant, as an internal auditor, we need to understand that how important this is for India, and that's why there will be more and more companies who will be coming in pharmaceuticals. There will be more and more expansion that will happen in the current companies. And the moment we have all this, I think we as a chartered accountant has a huge scope to get involved in internal audit of a pharmaceutical company, because as the major manufacturer or DOM form or a domestic formulation business grows, you will see that ancillary will also grow in. And once the core business is, you would have seen, Sun Pharma, I think close to 40,000, 50,000 crore is the turnover, right? So these all companies, like if we talk about Pune, we have one of the listed company now in Pune, which will be 6,000, 7,000 kind of crore turnover, right? So all these companies are growing in double digit. obviously their ancillary is also growing in double digit, and hence I feel that being a chartered accountant, we have an advantage to capture these industries. We understand numbers, we understand regulation, we are more governed by all these regulations. So I think it helps the company if we as a chartered accountant help the company to comply with these regulations or audit these regulations. I always feel that as an internal auditor, we are a doctor of the organization. So anything that happens to the company, first, first and foremost, that internal auditor is someone which I always say is, has most of the information of the company. Sometimes I say it's more, better than MD. Internal auditor has the knowledge of all the functions, because day in and out you are meeting people, you are meeting each and every department head. You know exactly where are the leakages, where are the risks, right? Where are the risk of the industry, where is the risk of the organization. So you are the better person to understand that what can go wrong. And that's why we have seen that, in most of the companies, internal auditors who are involved actually in the internal auditor role are called for when the company is taking any major decisions in terms of expansion, in terms of change of process, in terms of ERP implementation. And that's why I always say that we are a doctor for any organization. And if you see the function also, right, so what we do is, if there is any problem, we do the diagnosis. So on the real time basis, we do the diagnosis, we control, we help the client to identify the risk, how to mitigate the risk. We work with them, and we also prioritize the risk for them. So we go in depth and do the diagnosis of the company, right? So same like a doctor, we go and we do the diagnosis of the company, and we bring a right report and say, okay, these are the 5 parameters which we feel board should address, and then we help into a mitigation plan. So that's why I always say, we are like a doctor for any company. Now coming to the whole sector, when we talk about healthcare sector have various verticals, right? It has hospitals, pharmaceuticals, diagnostics, medical equipments, medical insurance, telemedicine, and all those stuff. Today, we are going to cover pharmaceutical, but at the same time, the whole industry, healthcare industry is being, if I'm not wrong, it's close to $400 billion industry today, and it's going at a double digit. So overall, the complete industry is growing, right? It's pharmaceutical, diagnostic, hospitals. If you see the share market, it's a recession-proof industry. So shares are also growing. It's one of the recession-proof markets. So everyone is, deeply involved and invested in this industry. Now, if we talk about pharmaceutical, it's further, if you broadly classify or bifurcate this industry, it's in two parts. One is APIs or intermediaries or bulk drugs, which is active pharmaceutical ingredients, which means the raw material for any medicine. For example, you are having crocin or paracetamol. There is paracetamol is a API which is being used to create that medicine, right? So again, we have branded and we have generics, and bulk drugs or intermediaries are which are used, all these raw materials which are used to create the any drug or medicine that you eat, those are called as APIs. It's a different kind of industry altogether, a separate industry, having similarity on terms of regulators and all those stuff, but again it's a separate industry when we talk about API or we talk about formulation. Now, Government of India is very active and wants to promote API in India, and hence there is production-linked incentive schemes for API production in India, because we are largely dependent on few other countries for APIs as of now. If we talk about the other, the creating of medicine, for example, you take tablets or you take insulin or you take any capsule or liquid form syrup, right? All these are the form of formulation that is a different industry altogether. And in that we have chronic and acute. So when we say chronic, so in general layman language, we say that any prescription which is more than 30 days, right? So which is consumed for more than 30 days. For example, if you have blood pressure, you are taking any telmisartan or DAPA or whatever. So it will be more than 30 days that you will continue for 6 months or a year until unless you go to for the next visit, right? So it's further divided into chronic and acute means, for example, viral, paracetamol, syrup, for fever, you take some or antibiotics. They are 3 days, 6 days kind of prescription. And so these are, a little shorter prescription. So chronic and acute. Why I'm discussing this is because each part of this industry or each vertical has again different kind of gross profit, different kind of net profits, production techniques, and also how the strategy is built around that is completely different. So any company would like to be more in chronic. If you talk about because the investors would see that, okay, their prescription is for 6 months or a year, right? So that's we say, okay, their customer acquisition cost versus the benefit that's going to come. So all those factors are there, and it helps to understand the strategy, to understand what a promoter or a board wants to get into, right? As an internal auditor, it's very important to understand which kind of scenario, what kind of business, because that's how we can understand the risks in each of the function. Now, this is just sample list just for deliberation and discussion. There can be many more risks, and as discussed, depending on the geography you are in, depending on the industry you are in, depending on API, depending on domestic formulation, export formulation, the risk can change. But we have trying to cover a broad list of risk that can be there in this industry. So if you broadly see there, we classify the risk into five uh, pillars. One is regulatory risk, which is the most important risk here. When we say regulatory, it starts from the approval of the factory, approval of the drugs, approval of the doses, dossiers. If you are in R&D, if you are in F&D, all those approvals of the drugs and the various regulators. We in pharmaceuticals, there are various DPCO, which we are going to cover at a later stage, drug price control order, governed by NPPA, National Pricing. There are pricing authorities. So there are various essential and life-saving drugs, which has to be, which should be sold at a prescribed rate. You cannot sell for more than the rate which has been prescribed. And it's been very deeply reviewed by the authorities. So there are various regulatory compliances, adverse drug reaction, which we are going to cover in detail, right? For there should be a pharmacovigilance, there should be approval, how the drug should be destroyed. So destruction process, how the, like Chitle Saab was rightly mentioning about environmental laws, right? How the waste is being disposed is very important, because there can be some hazardous drugs, how we are disposing that. So I think regulatory become a very important role in this whole industry. So as an internal auditor, we need to understand what are the laws, regulation that is applicable, how good is the control at factory, at HO, at each level from the regulatory perspective. Then operational, we have, again, operational same that we have in any other industry. So operational challenges remain same, but at the same time, quality control issues could be there. There can be supply chain disruption, because it's not like, you can just, you want to manufacture a t-shirt. So today you manufactured from A, tomorrow you got 10,000 more orders, you call B and say, okay, you give me this, because, right, this could not be possible, because that licenses needs to be approved from that particular factory. The factory that is manufacturing should have approval of that drugs that they are making for you. So there are various bunch of complexities that are there. So, supply chain is one of very critical, one of the very critical aspect of industry, because you can, it's like, for example, I mentioned t-shirt, right? If you want 10,000, you will say, okay, make 20,000 and keep, no issues. Okay, there will be blockage of working capital, there can be blockage of storage. But when you talk about pharmaceutical industry, each medicine has their own shelf life. So you cannot manufacture more, you cannot manufacture less. If you manufacture more and you are not kept it in the market for sale, or it's not being sold, expiry you have to take back. So any pharmaceutical industry have to take back the expiry whenever it comes in, wherever it has been expired, whether it is on central warehouse, it is in CFA, it's retail, or customer has come back and given back to the retailer, it will come back to the CFA, you'll have to collect. So end of the day, if your product is not sold, it's your cost. So you have to take back and give a credit note or a replacement, whatever your policy is. So supply chain becomes very important. So as compared to other industry, yes, there is raw material, manufacturing, finished goods, storage, but this is an added layer of complexity that comes in, which is a regulator, which is shelf life, which is temperature control, right? So few drugs needs to be temperature controlled, cannot go below, let's say, 24 degree, 20 degrees. So you need to make sure that, in each supply chain that temperature control is maintained. If it is a narcotic drugs, you need to make sure everyone handling that product should have a narcotic license and all those stuff. So these can be few operational risk which can be add on to other industry. Financial risk, again, the same with the add-on to this industry is high cost on R&D, right? So we have in India, we see few companies are investing in R&D now, research and development. It might happen that you have been heavily investing in R&D, but you don't have approval of that product, right? So as an internal auditor, we also need to see that what is the risk-taking appetite of that particular company while taking the while doing the R&D expenses, whether it is 2% of the profit, 5% of the profit, 10% of the profit, how many R&D you can do, all those budget, capex, how to capitalize it, whether it's the right way of capitalizing or it should be routed through P&L, and also what is the budget and versus what was the roadmap, whether we are on time, we are delayed, because one factory, for example, biosimilar or any other factory has been or one department is used for R&D. There's a huge cost for running these regulated factories. And if you are waiting for licenses, you cannot stop the factory, right? So you need to understand how does it work? What is the gestation period? Whether we are on track, we are not on track. One of the other trend, if you see in this industry, is acquisition and mergers. So this industry has been going through a consolidation for more than a decade, but still, as we speak, there is a lot of consolidation that happens in this industry. And if you see that somewhere it might be just transfer of trademark, there can be slum sale, there can be acquisition. How post merger the acquisition has happened, but how the company is performing, whether they're able to gel well post merger, whether we are going to get the results, what are the regulatory, what can be regulatory challenges, what is the ROI, what is the payback period, all those things, because it's a part of routine in pharmaceutical industry where you keep acquiring the brands, you keep acquiring the facilities, you keep acquiring the companies, right? Network, distribution. So you need to, as an internal auditor, we also need to see that, okay, what we have learned from the last acquisition, and we can also help the board to understand what went wrong, what went good in last acquisitions, and so this also becomes a part of internal audit to see that how finances are impacted in terms of capex, in terms of acquisition, in terms of merger, and all these events that happen. Uh, Again, one of the financial risks that we see is revenue loss due to IP infringement. If you see, any pharmaceutical company would have legal litigation on IP infringement, right? So there will be a trademark issues by one of the company on the other company. There can be order by the court, injection order by the court, or you would have to withdraw your product so your sales can go down and all. So that all financial risk is also part of this industry, which is very common. But what happens is, when the brand is big and if there is a litigation, then we need to also assess what could be the financial risk if tomorrow we have to withdraw the brand. So this is a very complex, I would say, subject in itself. So we need to be very hands-on when we do audit of a pharmaceutical industry, specifically in IP infringement. We need to understand where there can be a financial risk, where we'll have to withdraw the brand or product, or where there can be a small impact on the PNL, right? Technology, I think this remains common now with various laws coming in the data protection. Again, that is one thing where you might have data of of the people, patients. So it's very important that, and also R&D. If you are doing R&D, you have various confidential data. But more or less, it's common to all the industries where you are having cyber security and all. But again, there is a transformation that is happening all across the board in pharmaceutical also, right? So batch records are getting automated, and everyone is using platforms to have all the batch records, BPR, BMR, and all those stuff, right? So we need to be very careful about having that first saved in a right way, and that there should not be any integrity issue in the data. There should not be any loss of the data, proper backups, and all those stuff. So these all data becomes very critical. An emerging risk, if we see, is the reputational or quality issues and also unethical practices. So when you talk about pharmaceutical industry, we have seen various cases where the authorities have picked up unethical practices. There has been quality issues. If you would see now, because of these quality issues, government has also made it very compulsory to have formulation, the production plants GMP approved. I think by 31st March 25, everybody has to be GMP approved plant, which is further extended. But yes, all the manufacturing units will have to be good manufacturing practices approved and approved by the authority, right? So these all action has been taken to ensure the quality issues which we had in past. And also one of the emerging risk today we see in this whole industry is fake and spurious drugs. So today you are eating the medicine, but whether it's a original medicine which has been manufactured by formula, a brand, we are not sure, because I was reading these numbers are not verified, but still I was reading a WHO report which says that almost 30 or 35% of the drugs in India are spurious drugs. Spurious drug means it is not manufactured by a brand, who owns it. It's a fake kind of drugs which has been there. It can be effective, it cannot be effective. So these are the few, risks that are there in this industry, apart from the other risks that we have, covered in other manufacturing or, other companies. Now, generally how we look at in pharma is core and non-core processes, right? So if we talk about core processes, it's production to pay, procure to pay, production, right? We say production planning control, PPC. Supply chain management is a part of PPC and O2C, order to cash, sales and marketing, right? So these are some core processes of pharmaceutical industry, where procurement, again, depending on which we'll cover in detail in few next slides. But the complete production, complete procurement, how it's linked to the production, how it's linked to the planning, how it's linked to the sales force, casting, demand, etc. Again, the regulatory, how regulatory governs the procurement, manufacturing, and also the sales, right? So these are sub groups of the core activities, which we'll discuss in detail in few, next slides. Again, we already discussed supply chain management like FMCG. There is also reverse logistic or reverse distribution, where all the expiry has to come in. So all those adds on the complexities. There will be institutional sales, right? There will be discount schemes. There will be, if you are into international business, there will be approvals from the various international authorities for your facilities. There will be registered licenses which you can manufacture, right? So there's a periodicity of the audit, which again you have to get the facility audited by a particular, if it is US FDA, EU, and various other international. So you need to ensure the compliance around that. So these are few core areas of pharmaceutical industry. And these are some supporting functions when we talk about hire to retire HR process. So if you talk about a typical pharma company, and supposingly it is in chronic segment, right? So chronic segment is for cardiovascular or diabetes or these kind of thing. You would see that if the company is doing 100 rupees business, close to 20 rupees will go in manufacturing of the drugs. So their COGS that we say, right? Cost of goods sold will be 20. um, if it is a large company, their HR cost will be ranging between 10 to 15% to 20%. So 20% of that cost will go to the people, because they are the people. There are a lot of people who will, there will be people who will be going to the doctors, who will be convincing the doctors about their quality, educating the doctors about the product, and then doctor is going to prescribe. So large component of your P&L goes to hire to retire. So it becomes a very important and critical cost. And there are few additional layer of auditing that we need to do. One is definitely the payroll, payroll processing, etc. But there is a huge cost of reimbursement, because if you see these MRs, medical representative, which are on ground, when you visit any doctor, you will see that MR sitting there. There's a huge travel cost, conveyance cost, reimbursement cost that needs to be verified. There are call records that need to be reviewed. So these are few additional layer of complexity or additional layer which we need to review while doing a pharmaceutical industry audit. Financial reporting, more or less, it's same. Depending on where, what is the geography. If it is India, so you would report in a same manner. Additionally, you will have like as I mentioned, IP, intangible assets. So there will be good amount of intangible assets in any balance sheet of a pharmaceutical industry. Intangible assets, goodwill, and also there will be a provision of expiry, right? So this is also one of the very critical KRA for a business review, that what are the expiries that are coming in. For example, if the business, if the industry standard for cardiology, diabetes is 2%, right? What are your expiries, and whether the provision has been made, how it is being, the whole process is being dealt. So these are a couple of additional layer that will be there in pharma. Otherwise, more or less, the accounting and reporting remains same. Regulatory, we already discussed. Licensing, I think regulatory is again a major chunk of internal auditor's role when we talk about any pharma industry, because licensing of each product, you need to make sure that you have a license of all the products, validity of the license is there, your factories are approved, environmental NOCs have been taken, it's been followed, all those, waste management is being done on as is prescribed in various schedules. And then the submissions and filing of the forms, DPCO has been compliant, and all those stuff. I think regulatory plays a very important role. So one, what I see is, regulatory, order to cash, procurement to pay, and PPC, production planning control. So these are, 4, 5 core areas which also is different from other industry. Then, other area of support can be related party, entity level controls, insurance, information security, CSR, and these are the non-core processes. So I hope we are clear till here that what are the components of industry, what are the buckets that we look at while doing an internal audit, core, non-core, and then in non-core we have these long list. Now, as we were discussing, about, if we briefly cover. So, so if we briefly see, in statutory, as we discussed, right? So under the compliance, so this is how we look at, broadly look at the risk when we start our audit assignment, or when we look at any company. We broadly cover the broad audit areas. Then we freeze on the risk categories in that sub areas, I would say, and that what are the risk that is there. As we discussed statutory compliance, there can be a quality issue, There can be product recall issue, right? So there can be some failure of the product. You have received any complaints from the consumer, or while retesting stability of the product, you found that this product does not have that efficacy that you have assured, or that was documented, or that has to be for that product. You recall that product, right? Validity challenges, there can be quality concern, trademark infringement, DPCO. These are all part of statutory. When we talk about production planning control, right? So production planning control, again, there can be few production inefficiencies, low yield. In procurement to pay, there can be a dependency on single vendor. There can be dependency on third party. There can be third party risk because you have outsourced to third party. Third party, you are not aware about quality. So very important to visit third party sites also and see whether they are adhering to what standards you are willing to implement in your factory, whether they are adhering to same level of standards. Order to cash, again, expired drug disposal, spurious drug. So these are, just I've presented it for your reference, that these are some risk that is peculiar to this industry, and we need to take care, especially while doing audit of these companies. When you're doing plant audit, so waste disposal, very, very important, right? How water is being disposed, how the waste is being disposed, whether waste is being further bifurcated into, whether it is narcotic, or whether it is hazardous, it is not hazardous. If it is hazardous, how it is being disposed. If it non-hazardous, how it's being disposed. So all that needs to be very critically reviewed. Is there any pollution issue, water pollution, air pollution, whether they have the required NOC, whether they have, all these licenses. This is again very important and critical when you are doing a plant audit. Definitely then, safety, it's common in all the industries, manufacturing industries. We also discussed about adverse drug reaction complaints. So there is a pharmacovigilance department itself, that after a certain, this pharma company who has a domestic formulation need to have pharmacovigilance. They need to have this toll-free number, or any number, or email ID, where anyone can write to that company that after eating this medicine, I had these reactions. How companies reviewing that data, whether it was a there can be multiple issues. It's not that drug has the issue. It can be that I am allergic to something and I'm having a drug, and there can be some reaction to my body. So company has to analyze all that in accordance with the prescribed rules, and also they have to report to the regulatory department. Okay, we have received this drug reaction, whether it is critical, it is not critical, and all those things. So we need to, as an auditor, understand first what is required to be implemented, and then whether company is following those rules and regulations or not. So if we talk about production planning control, right? I'm taking one function as production planning control. Just excuse me for a minute. Also, please feel free to write on the chat if you have any queries, questions. Uh, Definitely, what I understand is after the end of this session, we'll have a Q&A session, and I will also try to share my experience, whatever limited I have, and learn from you if you have something. But in the meantime, if you have any queries, questions, please feel free to drop on the chat box. Now, till here we were just understanding about the broad structure and what it takes to audit any pharmaceutical industry, specifically if it is in DOM form, domestic formulation. Now we are going to cover a couple of processes which are, and go deep diver and see that what exactly and how exactly to do this. So we'll cover, I think, one of the very complex, one of the most important, process which I feel in this industry is production planning control, because it connects O2C, it connects P2P, and it is O2 PPC is the most regulated part of this ecosystem. So as usual, as other industries would do to do any manufacturing, forecast, planning, and then they decide whether they want to do in-house, they want to give to third party, generate the PO and start the production. But here are the few provisions that a company needs to do is whether what kind of sales we are having primary, whatever sales we are having secondary, what is the the stock you have in CWH. So all that needs to be taken care while doing a sales forecasting. Again, one of the critical factor here is expiry. So what is the shelf expiry? How much stock you have? So for example, one few companies will say that okay, if we have 6 month expiry which is being left in the organization, we will not bill it. Right? This is the most standard thing. So if you have a shelf life of 24 months, 5 to 6 months you manufactured, kept in central warehouse. From there it went to CFA, then it went to stockist sold it to retailer. So that's how the whole supply chain work. Right now, it might happen that your stock is with stockist or with CFA or in central warehouse itself, which is going to expire in next 6 months. So though it is in your stock, but you'll have to take it in the provision and you have to reduce it from your inventory while doing the forecast. So these are a few additional layers, of working that comes in when you work in this industry. So basically, expiry, whether it is on the shelf expiry or third party expiry. Again, the critical part comes here is production planning and execution, right? Once you have a plan, you decided whether you want to do in-house or you want to do through a third-party subcontracting factory. You will see, okay, which factory is approved, which factory has a license for that product, whether they can produce that product or not, and then accordingly you will proceed. Once you have decided to create and product, do production in-house, then there will be a indent that will be manufactured, whether it is monthly production indent or daily production indent. Then the batch is created. As you all are aware, there is a batch size of every formulation or medicine that is being produced. So there will be prescribed batch of that product, which is also pre-decided. If you want to split or increase or decrease, then again you have to go through a regulatory process where QA, QC, and everybody will verify and regulator. But there's a batch creation. So every product that it can be 1 lakh tablets, 2 lakh tablet, 5 lakh tablet, depending on the nature and depending on the volume that is required. So there will be a batch creation. So first the batch has to be created to create that medicine. While creating a batch, you need to understand, you need to verify whether you have license to create a batch, whether there is a various authorities who will approve those creation of the batch. There will be request from the production department, QA, QC, and then approval goes on. All right. There will be a batch creation. So once the batch is created, there will be a BMR, batch manufacturing record, right? So BMR is a Bible, or I would say Kundali of that batch. How and when the batch started, how the movement of that goods has happened in the factory, what process has been done, at what time, what machines has been used, for what particular time, it was kept in which area, what testing was done, what was the yield after each process. I think this is a very beautiful, I'm sure you would have seen this batch manufacturing record has each and every detailing about what has happened to that batch or a raw material, right? What processing was done, what was input, what was output, what was the yield, which product, which machinery, which line was used, right? Each process there can be inline testing, right? After every process, there can be testing by QA, QC, and all those stuff. So this is very highly regulated and a disciplined, pre-documented, formulated process that is being followed while doing batch manufacturing record. So this is the full, I would say, 100, 200 kind of pages file uh, where all the testing records of whenever it was tested, its record, whether it is being failed, if it is failed, why it is failed, whether yield is less, then why the yield is less, whether there was some kappa which has been addressed, everything will be there in that record. And this is something which is a main part of or main document for any batch that is being created. As an internal auditor, we also need to see what process has been prescribed, whether that process has been followed, whether the maintenance of this product has been done, the machinery which was used, when what was it cleaned, whether it was clean, it was not clean, everything will be there in batch manufacturing record. Once you see the batch manufacturing record, you will come to know the governance that is there. But sometimes you also have to see, this will be a beautiful record that someone would show you, but practically you need to go and see whether whatever they are writing in batch manufacturing recorder is there happening on ground, right? It should not happen that it's a beautiful file which has been created for the auditors or for the customers or for the regulators, but it is not happening on ground. So it's very important for us to go on ground, and this can only happen if we understand the process. If we technically understand the process, how does it work? Right? So that's why I say that in pharma, we need to understand also the manufacturing process of each type of product, and then only we'll be able to audit that. And sometimes you have to take the help of the experts who are from the production, and use them for their services to audit, because this is all set different skill set altogether. But as an auditor, we can look at from the regulatory point of view, from the documentation point of view, from the yield point of view. If there's a failure of product, then why the failure is happening again and again, and all those things. I think once you are working in that industry, you can catch those kind of observations. Material requisition, manufacturing process, and so this is again requisition that is common in all the industry. But interestingly, once the production is done, then there will be a packing record. So then batch packing record, BPR, will be created. Now BPR will have the same kind of information what batch manufacturing record, BMR, would have, right? So there was BMR was more on the production, and BPR will be more on the packing side. How the packing has been processed for that particular batch, when it started, how it was done, how much time it was put it on hold, how it was stocked, all those things will be there in the batch pack. And once you critically analyze these documents and you verify that everything is happening, whatever is being written there is happening on ground, I think you get lot of inputs from this, right? What is the efficiency of the factory, what is the efficiency, what is the quality, right? What is the yield? Because if you see yields are fluctuating, that means they don't have a particular SOPs. It depends on the person who is there on the ground. So there has to be a SOP which makes sure that you're getting, depending on the product, 90%, 95%, 98% yield. There is a efficacy you're getting for the product. There is no quality failure, and even if there is a failure, it has been properly reported with the reason, and then you see that okay, that has been implemented for the next batch record. So I think this is one of the critical area of any pharmaceutical industry. And then again, manpower planning is fine. Machine availability, again, preventive maintenance plays a very important role, and cleaning of the machines. Again, because contamination can happen if the machines are not clean. Whatever product you manufacture, right, the contamination can happen, and then you will end of the line, you will see that okay, there is a failure of the product due to contamination. Right, so that is very important to see that okay, preventive maintenance, cleaning of the machines are happening as per the prescribed guidelines. And also in process testing, sometimes we observe that okay, there is a record of in process testing, but the testing has not happened the way it should happen, or by the methodology it should happen. Again, as I mentioned, this is a very technical thing, that you need to we need to understand when you go in the industry. But you can take help of the expertise, or once you have audited multiple times, you will see that okay, simply by observing and being on the ground, you can understand whether they are following SOPs or only it's a creation of the document. Right? Then once the production is done, dispatch as I mentioned, the supply chain is simple. So generally there is a central warehouse, and they'll have a CFAs, and then they will have a super stockist or stockist or distributors, and then there will be a retail chain, and then goods come to a retailer. So this is a typical chain of domestic formulation company. And a few critical areas to be assessed here is material returns, right? So each and every material that comes in needs to be, we say quarantine. So the material that comes in is put in for quarantine. Then sample is being taken, testing is being done. If it is approved, it gets inward. If it is not approved, it's been rejected or sent back to the supplier. Very important again to see whether there are quality issues with the vendor, what actions has been taken, is in spite of having the quality issues, are we continuing the same vendor and all those stuff. Because once you have the raw material which is not of good quality, definitely will not get the finished goods of a right quality. And it might happen that and at the mid of the production, you would find that this is all because of raw material. So you need to be very sure about your testing while in housing the raw material. Scrap sales, batch costing. Again, the batch costing, compression cost, CCPS that we say. What is the cost per product? That how the costing is being monitored. PPC. This is how one can look at, one can design for the audit of production facility for any domestic formulation company. So what are the typical risks that we see in this whole process, right? One is the inaccurate demand forecast. So this is common to all the industry. So while you are doing production, you will always see that, okay, what is my demand forecast, right? It might happen that you have taken a wrong demand forecast, and this generally happens when the product is seasonal or it's a new launch. So you don't know what is my demand forecast, right? So again, as I mentioned, if you manufacture more goods, then there's a possibility of getting it expired, and again you'll have to, there's a cost of expiry that you'll have to give a credit note, plus there's a cost of reverse logistics, reverse distribution, and there is also a cost of destruction and whatever the operational cost is there. So it's very important to understand the demand forecast. We have seen a lot of companies, generally what being on the from the sales side, people will give a heavy forecast. Small companies generally take that forecast, get the goods manufactured, and end of the day suffer the losses due to the huge expiry, on shelf and third party expiry. So we always look at what has been sales trend, right? And what has changed where suddenly your 100% there's a growth. We need to understand that logic. We need to understand, we should get convinced with that logic. And it's very important to see that how demand forecast is being addressed, how it's been created. And I think as an internal auditor, we play a very important role to balance this in terms of looking at, okay, this is a forecast, but this is your trend. So, and if you're saying 100% increase, what are the factors that is going to drive the market by increase of 100% of that demand, right? So we need to balance that. Insufficient capacity planning. On the other side, it can happen that you have a demand but you don't have a capacity. In that case, or you have a dependency on a single vendor, who was manufacturing for you, or you have a dependency on a single raw material supplier, right, who is not able to supply to you. So these are the various risks that we need to see while doing production planning control. You don't have a proper material planning. You have something in production today, but you don't have a raw material. Vice versa, you have excess raw material, which again, raw material will also have an expiry. So it will also expire. Though it will higher expiry, but again, you have a working capital blockage, insufficient scheduling of plant maintenance, lack of process monitoring. Very important. If you don't, sometimes, as I mentioned, we have seen few cases where there is a process of monitoring, testing, but it has not happened, right? at the end of the process, when there's a final testing of the batch, you realize that something was missed in batch one and this whole product is going to fail. So very important that we have process monitoring after each manufacturing process. We have yield testing, we have thorough testing of a lab testing of that particular product, so that if there is any deficiency at that level, we destroy or we reject that batch or we rework on that batch, right? Product failure risk, always there is a risk, even though you have made this product 100 times in the same factory, same product, same people, but there can be risk, and there are multiple risks that as I mentioned, there can be contamination, there can be raw material, there can be some process failure which can result into a failure of the product. Stability risk, as you all are aware, you need to maintain some samples in your stability chamber and keep on testing. After 6 months, there is a possibility that you feel that your product is not stable and you have to recall that product. Risk of third party manufacturing, you have outsourced to third party, they are not managing all the process well, and there's a possibility. Now you all are aware that the marketing company as well as the manufacturer both are responsible in case of any failure of the compliances from the regulator. Maintenance, safety, cost overrun risk, on-time delivery, narcotic product handling, expiry of raw material. If not properly managed raw material, then there is a possibility of raw material being expiring. And if it is expired, how it's been destroyed again. It's very important. And risk of shelf life. I think this is one of the risks which is in this industry of expiry, which you have to collect. So this was one process. I also covered one more process, which is order to cash. So order to cash basically is from once the product is manufactured, how it's been distributed and reached to the consumer, how money is being collected, and what happens if the product has been expired, right? So generally, typically, as mentioned, central warehouse will have CFA or CWA or super stockist. Then we will have a stockist or a distributor, and then we'll have a retailer, and retailer will sell to an end customer like us, or instead of retailer there will be an institution or a hospital, right? So this is how broadly the supply chain works. Now in the order to cash, first and foremost is appointment of the stockist. So if there's any company who needs to distribute their product, they'll first identify a distribution gap. Again, very important, generally what happens is we have seen company have multiple stockists in one area. Then you see that they are just dumping the goods. End of the day, it's going to come back as expiry. And if even so, for example, if you have two stockists, you want to sell 10 lakh rupees a month, right? So if that is not happening, you will have 10 stockists and you'll just supply 1 lakh rupees a month product. But ultimately, there is no secondary, so it's going to come. So very important to see, how the distribution gap is being done, whether they need those kind of stockists or they should consolidate depending on the requirement and the market, and also by the sales. Also, you would see that is there any stockist where they buy and 80% of the product is being given back as expiry after a year or after 6 months, or it's been sellable, it's been returned. So there can be again a flaw in terms of salesperson having some relationship with the stockist where they say, okay, let's do the target this month and then we'll see, right? So all those happens generally in the large companies. These all processes are settled, but and these are mid-size or growing companies, there's quite a possibility. Then how the documentation is done with the stockist, whether how the credit limit is being set, whether they have the drug license, they have the food license, which is active, and then only we are supplying, because these also form a part of regulatory. How the credit is being reviewed, every 6 months, quarterly. What are the credit period for regular drugs? What is the credit period of the new drugs which has been launched? So all that needs to be audited from the distribution perspective. Then we talk about movement of inventory, how the movement take place. And the whole objective here, order to cash, is again to have an efficient supply chain, speed to market, reduction of expiry, collection of cash, right? These are the few areas which are the KRAs of a distribution company. We'll see in the next slide how we can achieve all these, in a more effective manner. Again, we talk about, then it's a common process for everybody where there's a receipt, processing of order, dispatch, closure orders, and all this. So this is common for various industries. Receivable, sales return management, as we discussed, again very critical. Sales return management, physical verification of inventory. So most of the companies, when we get the returns, they check the inventory what has been returned, right? So whether that inventory was supplied, because there's a good possibility that spurious drugs can be mixed while doing a return of the goods, right? We have not sold, but as a company, we are receiving more products that was manufactured and sold. There's a possibility, right? So any spurious guy, a spurious drug manufacturer would say, okay, let me just infuse somehow in the expiry so that there is no adverse drug reaction. It will go to the expiry, I'll get a credit note. So very important exercise in order to cash process. So, inventory management, expiry reduction, and speed to market. This is a very key component of order to cash when you are auditing a pharmaceutical process where, lot of analysis is required. For example, you need to forecast SKUs in a very broad, in a very, I would say, analytical view you need to have on all the SKUs, which has been selling, demand forecast. If it's not selling at at one area, you have an inventory at one CFA, it's not going in south, but in north you have a good demand. So you need to keep rotating that inventory, because end of the day, the product will expire in that CFA and you will incur a cost. At the same time, you are incurring the cost working capital to serve to north. However, you have a stock in south. So in a very analytical, if any distribution team of any company have a very analytical view, I think they can save a lot of money, cost, and bring an efficiency to the distribution side, right? They can analyze, region-wise, stockist-wise inventory, primary, secondary, where you have a stock. Can we take action at the right time, bring in the stocks, send it to the area where it is been selling faster, better, and then liquidate the whole process, liquidate that stock with using this effective process. And also how we can use speed to market, just in time kind of manufacturing, so that we don't waste the shelf life of the product sitting in the warehouse, sitting in the CFA or a stock. So what is the most efficient way? So these are few things which we have seen. There is a huge cost of inventory lying there, and which end of the day will hit your PNL. Right. So all these you need to identify: slow moving, near to expiry, inventory lying with the stockist for more than 6 months. So can we get back, distribute it in various other locations? You see, having said that, it's a one company would have maybe 500,000, 5,000 products. You need to have a consistent review of this product to see that how we can reduce inventory cost, speed to market can be improved, and also your expiry cost can be reduced, right? This will all bring in the efficiency to the whole system. So as an internal auditor, we can play a very important role in analyzing these, but these data are fairly large data. We might have to use some tools, we might have to use micros, we might have to use advanced Excel. So it's very important, and you all know that in internal audit we have we need to have a very good Excel skill, to analyze all this. So having said that, may not be 100% product can be analyzed in this manner, but you can always have A, B, C. You know that these are my hero products. This will sell. Product B also, but product C, which are limited new launches, can we do some kind of rotation and improve? Because 2, 3%, 5% kind of expiry to whole PNL is a big hit that any pharma company can have. And also these are few analysis that, higher expiry by region, whether it is by region you have a higher expiry, by stockist you have a higher expiry, maybe that product is not working better in south, we should stop the sale in south and keep only in north. We can do the maths, and whether it is any particular region, it is any particular area, whether it is particular stockist, right? So all these analysis will help company to, though it's a role of a company, it's a responsibility of the company to do that, but as an internal auditor it's also equally important that we review these we review this numbers analysis working, and if it is not there, we help them implementing all these processes so that the supply chain can be efficient. Because we as an internal auditor, it's not only giving them whether that compliance has been achieved or that has been complied with. It's equally important to add value to each and every process that we do. It can be in terms of compliance, it can be because anyways, as we mentioned, regulatory is very important for pharma. So that is again very important role to report regulatory as well. But at the same time, I would say that looking at the complexity of the business as an internal auditor and having understanding of all the processes, we can add lot of value to the client. If anybody have any questions, happy to take. You can write in the chat box. We'll just take a couple of minutes break and we'll rejoin. So we'll also cover legislation overview. So, how the legislation or government authority controls the whole ecosystem of pharma, and what are the departments, how the approval works. Very broadly, I'm going to cover that so that we understand the whole ecosystem. So this is a very detailed subject. I think it needs a lot of detailing in itself. But what we are trying to cover is, to understand a broader framework when we are going for auditing any company. So what is a broader framework around which we need to plan our internal audit, right? So, Government of India uh, have various departments. Which we say as a regulator. Right, regulator will have Director General of Health and Services, will have CDSO, Central Drug Standard Control Organization, will control the complete licenses, drugs, quality of drugs. Then we have NPPA, right? NPPA, as we discussed, is basically pricing authority, National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, which will issue various list NLEM, list of under DPCO, drug price control orders. There are various departments which covers each and every part of this whole ecosystem. Then there will be controller general of patent, right? So these are the various. Then there is department of pharmaceuticals, etc., right? And these all departments and is under various ministry, like Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Will have Director General of Health Services and Central Drug Standard Control Organization, right? We'll also see what are their roles. So if you see Ministry of Science and Technology, right, will have discovery. So if you see the whole ecosystem, there will be discovery and research of the product, which is R&D, development and product registration. So when the discovery is done, there will be a development and product registration, there will be manufacturing, there will be drug promotion, there will be drug pricing, there will be supply chain, there will be pharmacovigilance, like as we discussed about any complaints and quality of the drugs. And this all processes is being divided by various departments, is taken care by the various departments, right? And this has been distributed depending on the roles and responsibilities of the department. So you need to um, adhere to their policies, rules, regulations of that particular department in that particular journey of the product. If you are in discovery and research, you need to deal with these departments and regulators. If you are into manufacturing, that you need to maintain. So it depends at what stage your product is. Now, just putting in few list of laws that might be applicable. Again, it depends on which geography you are in, which what products you manufacture, whether you are manufacturing for Indian company, you are manufacturing for exports market, depending on that. But broadly, what we see is what these acts will be applicable to any pharma company. And when we are doing regulatory audit, we need to also identify which laws are applicable. And if you see any domestic company which is into manufacturing, having DOM form, domestic formulation, and not even export, you would see, labor laws, financial laws, manufacturing laws, environmental laws. If you thoroughly review any company, there's a possibility that you are seeing almost 70, 60 laws, 50 to 60 laws applicable to one company, right? Only doing regulatory periodic audit of any pharmaceutical industry is, I think, a separate expertise that one can look at. So, you would see Trademark Act, right? So there are, as we mentioned, there are multiple, every product, every medicine, there's a trademark process that they follow. There's a good possibility that without getting a registered trademark, they'll start supplying manufacturing, and you will see a litigation, right? So that process, how it can be streamlined. There is a patent act, there's a UCP/MP guidelines, which is not compulsory as of now, but uniform code for pharmaceutical marketing. As we all are aware, pharmaceutical products cannot be marketed. You cannot run an ad for any particular medicine, right? So it has to be within this UCMP guidelines, code of marketing practices. So we need to be very thorough about these UCPMP guidelines, though it's not compulsory, but there are still various acts which prohibits marketing of the product. So which kind of product cannot be marketed, which kind of product can be marketed, we need to see, right? Um, list of compliance under various acts. So e-commerce, advertisement, how you can print in the website, e-commerce, where you can supply, you cannot supply, you can only supply to the license holders, and there are various complexities that comes in when you are saying. So generally what we do is we bifurcate into two laws. One is central government laws applicability, and one is state government, because there will be few water act or maybe some other pollution, there can be some specific requirement from the state government. So we bifurcate into two parts. One is central government laws applicability, and other is state government laws applicability. So central government, if anyone manufacturing drugs all across India, anywhere in India, they will have to follow Drug and Cosmetic Act 1940. Again, this is a very comprehensive act which covers various things, Schedule M and all those stuff, right? Which has been recently revised. So this is a very comprehensive act. Essential commodity, we just spoke about DPCO, Drug Price Control Order, narcotic drug. These are the few acts like narcotic and all which are non-bailable offense, right? So once you are caught, even the MD or a director can be in behind the bars until unless you get the order in your favor. So these are few very critical laws, because you are in a business, like in a pharmaceutical, you are in a business, we are public at a large, you are serving, and that to life of the people, right? So this is very critical to understand the applicability, to understand how it's been what are the risks and how it's been mitigated. There should be a good corporate governance inside the system to ensure that we are compliant with this kind of risk, right? So then Environment Protection Act, there can be Explosive Act, Petroleum Act, depending on various products that you are dealing with. And then there will be a state acts. So there will be a state act that would be applicable. As I mentioned, there will be a particular water act. Generally, we see in every state has a different kind of water act being implemented and all those stuff for a manufacturing. So some state would say, okay, like Assam would say, okay, you have to pay on each liter of the water you take from groundwater, and you also have to pay for the waste that you have generated of the water. So you need to have those kind of mechanism to monitor. So these are generally small acts, but very important when it comes, if there is any complaint or if there is any audit from the regulator, it's important that we are adhering to all these acts as well, right? So there's also, as Chitle Saab and Kadam Saab mentioned, that there is also a technical guide on internal audit of pharmaceutical sector, which was co-authored by me, and we have tried to cover various processes, regulation, what are the current scenarios, what are the drivers of pharmaceutical industry, how the complete framework works, how the each cycle, how the each process should be looked at, and how it can be audited. So this is, if you are interested in pharmaceutical, I think this can help, someone who is trying to develop their expertise in pharma. Obviously, once you have done few audits, then the discussion will be at a different level. But now what we are trying to cover here is someone who is trying to enter an internal audit of a pharmaceutical industry. So with this, my discussion comes to an end, and happy to discuss a brainstorm, because we are also at a learning stage. So it will be good to brainstorm with our fellow colleagues. So over to you, Kadam Saab.
Thank you, CM Mohit. It's really a brainstorming session. And I saw that there are too many regulatory compliances required for a pharmaceutical company. Even you told that for narcotic department, there is a non-bailable offense.
Yes.
So
Yes.
internal audit is really a critical process in pharmaceutical companies.
Yes. Yes. You're right, sir.
Yeah. Can we move for the question answer?
Sure.
Yeah. We have a questions from Saili, CA Saili Thakur. Do we take a help of technical expert for stock count of a huge raw material stocks of pharma company?
Yeah, see, then we are depending on the work of the third party. So we can definitely, and all the companies, we also take some time. So it's very common. But at the same time, we need to have our own checklist. We need to have our own mechanism and control also to see that whether the third party who is doing the work is, because what happens is 31st March, for example, you'll have maybe 5 warehouses, you will have CFA locations, you might have 10 CFA or 20 CFA or 5 CFA. It might be difficult for you to get into each stock audit or do for one company. And if you have 5 companies, then you have 100 audits to do. But at the same time, definitely what we practice is looking at the priority, right? For example, most of the stock would be with 2 CFAs or 2 central warehouse. So we go and audit that central warehouse, and rest of them are being outsourced, or we have taken the help of the expertise. But we also set an expectation, we also set a kind of reporting, and we also give a kind of checklist to them, so that whenever the data comes in that particular format, we're able to see that, okay, whether the quality work has been done. And our standards also allow, but we have to disclose to the client that we have taken the help of the experts or third party. And at the same time, now we have video conferencing and all, so right, so that also helps, where when they are taking the record, you can also have a recording of some sample. So we also do sometimes where we schedule a call like this, we record a call, and we ask them randomly to check this particular thing. So once you have done in a right manner, so that's not a challenge. And I think most of us use that tool.
Yeah, I think it is required. I think pharma company has a huge stock. So
Yeah. And the SKUs, if you see the SKUs also, right, they have multiple SKUs, right? Multiple products. So, and then you also have to do raw material, you have to do WIP, you have to do finished goods. And generally, like the other businesses, it will be distributed all across. They'll have multiple central warehouse, CFA location, there'll be expiry. So, you might need help of experts, and that is quite acceptable in the industry as well.
second question. There are some ERP software to monitor the production planning in case of pharma companies. Do we do a walkthrough of this software and have access to the audit process?
100%. So when you do ITGC, you go through, we have gone to an extent where we have audited the system as well. And we have asked the ERP company to make sure that our data is not used, or they don't have access to our data. If someone, though it's encrypted data sometimes, so we ask them to, if they want to see our data or work on our data, we have gone and ahead and asked to implement a OTP system, where if they see our data, they'll have to get an OTP which will expire in 30 minutes or an hour or what. So, it's very important because everything is in ERP. So we need to first, as we do, right, control testing. So whether the ERP itself has a proper control, or it's easy to override the controls in the system. So very important. Again, here also, we should, sometimes we feel that, yeah, why should we hire somebody from the IT background? If we just give an example, our IT CTO, we have a CTO who reviews this system along with the finance team. So as a transaction approval authority matrix, we'll see. But as a system, we might not have that knowledge or that exposure, right? So it's always good to have your own expert, or you can request the client that, we need this kind of requirement. So please appoint any neutral agency who will do the ITGC, IT controls audit, and give it. It's one of the most important thing when it is an ERP environment.
Another question from CA Pooja, that can we have an internal audit report layout on pharma industry?
100%. So see, ultimately, if you see, I think reporting remains standard in all the industry. So right, you'll have your key facts, your background, your observations, then what are the your suggestions, and what can be the impact, and what is the owner their management's response, and all those stuff. And that's the next step. I think reporting, if you ask me, reporting more or less is the same that we, and I am sure there will be various technical guides that are there of IASB, or we are coming up with that reporting also. Now the standard is also coming on the reporting, which is internally being discussed now and should be out very soon for a public comment. Yeah, but reporting would remain same. But ultimately, what will change is methodology and the risk of that particular industry. So that is more important. Reporting will be standard.
Okay. There is one another question on a technical background. Each product knowledge becomes essential for internal auditor for auditing any technical product company.
See, I would not say that it is something which you need to know that how it's been, what kind of bomb is being used, and all those stuff. We are not scientists, but end of the day, client also is very smart. So they'll say, okay, they will say that, okay, if you don't understand the industry, you don't understand the product, they'll give you answer in that technical manner, that you will not be able to say whether it is right or wrong. So I believe not day one, but as you progress with the client, I think we are always on the learning journey. Client only teaches us, and then so on the learning journey. So when I started, at least my career in pharma, I used to just go and sit in the factory to understand, 7 days, 10 days, 5 days, to audit also. And some part of the time, I used to sit with the production head. I used to sit with procurement. And still we do, because if you talk about technical side, we might also not know, or know a very small portion of this. But I think it helps once you understand the whole ecosystem. Otherwise, you will be superficially auditing, right? You will not know what is the bomb, what component has gone in, what is the complexity of that. If you're in a biosimilar, we say that DS, right? So raw material importance to that. So, and it also become very convenient when you're talking to the client knows that you understand their product, and you're talking sense, you're talking about their product, you understand the industry, and there's a weightage that comes in, and definitely it comes over the period. By experiencing only it comes. But what I have seen, it always helps if you have the knowledge of the product. And it's not only pharma, it's also, the other industry. Anywhere you go, if you don't understand the business, if you don't understand the product, I think then we are losing on the control of the audit.
Mohit, one question from my side actually.
So,
I am interested that whether all these procedure is applicable to generic companies, generic medicines.
yeah. So see, because when you are manufacturing in India, the regulator is same. Right?
Okay.
So you need to follow. Okay, the process, what can change is in O2C process, generally in generic products, expiry is the responsibility of a stockist. So expiry doesn't come back. Right?
Yes.
Expiry may, the cycle is long. For O2C, your cycle can be 90 days, can be 100 days. Whereas in your domestic formulation, which is branded generics, we say, will be 7 days, 20 days, 21 days. Cycle is shorter. Your margins are different. Maybe your quality standards will only be limited to the regulator. You might not have a very strong, additional quality standards, because you see it's a generic, because your margins are also low. You need to procure and um, manufacture. But yes, generally, as a regulator see, most of the things are common.
Okay, means generic medicine category will fall under the same category.
Yeah. So because it has to be, governed by the regulator, so it will.
Okay. Now, Mohit, there is a last question. Uh, Please tell us the procedure about the completion of stock audit in pharma industry. I think he want to ask that what is the procedure for stock audit?
See, what we follow is generally, there will be the two locations. So if we talk about the supply chain, right, we'll have central warehouse, we'll have CFA. Till CFA, the stock is owned by the company. right? So we prioritize and see, okay, where we have the most stock, A, B, C we do, right? And we try to cover A, B or C can be outsourced, or if you want to do 100%, then we, and then, we take a list depending on the SKUs, depending on, again, it depends whether you want to do the finished goods, you want to do raw material, you want to do expiry. If it is expiry, then it's a very tedious process, because expiry would have come from various stockists, which is kept in CWH or CFA, and then it has gone to destruction. So it's a very regular process that we do with other this thing. With, of course, you will see, then we see the expiry also plays an important role. So something which is expiry within 6 months, so while you are auditing that, but you will also keep in mind whether the provision has been made, because now, as I mentioned, some companies will say, okay, if the expiry is nearing 6 months, it's nearing expiry, we will not bill it. So then, have the company made a provision of that? Then, if the expired goods are there, how it's being stored? There is a now regulation that has comes in, who mark, put in a that is a expired product, so it cannot be reused. How that process is being process, how the destruction process happens. So these are some additional layer apart from the normal stock audit that you would do for any other industry.
Yes, thank you, Mohit. Actually, we have covered all the questions.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and since there is no more questions, now we move towards the conclusion of this session. Thank you so much, CA Mohit, for such an insightful and engaging session. I am sure all the participants leave today with a valuable takeaways and renewed understanding of the evolving role of internal audit in pharma industry. Before we conclude, I take this opportunity to extend my heartful thanks to our chairman, to our vice chairman for their guidance, and all the participants for your active involvement and continued commitment for professional growth. A special note of appreciation also goes to the organizing team behind this event for their seamless coordination and support. With that, we conclude today's webinar on internal audit in pharmaceutical industry. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you, Mohit.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.